Hey folks, Keith McGowan, the Outboard Dad here to help you have a better boating experience. Today we're going to talk about some tools that I've acquired over the years, some tools that I've purchased, some that I've picked up at garage sales. Had some people ask questions about tools, so we figured I'd spend a little time on the tools that I've collected over the years. Now this is not going to go through all of them because I'm sure you don't want me to bore you with all of that. Please like, subscribe, and send me any comments you have. So we'll start with the basic workbench of what I built here is just some benches and some shelves that I like to work with a lot of different things on them. You know, I have a lot of parts like O-rings. Harbor Freight stuff has a lot of those kits that I purchase. But let's go into some of the hand tools that I use first. You can see up here I have some of the Bosch tools. All right, I like the Bosch handheld Sawzall. It's very handy for a lot of different things. I do have the Impact as well, but it broke, so I got a set of instructions. It's just kind of shoved up there right now. When I get a chance to work on it, I will. Since I have the ratchet, that's also, it's not really an Impact, but I do have another Milwaukee that's an Impact that I got a deal on, so if I need an Impact I use that. Again, Ryobi drill, and also have, it came in a kit, one of the larger Bosch Sawzalls too, all battery operated. I used to have electric for many years, but didn't really see the need for it anymore because I'm not spending a lot of time cutting things. But let's get into some of the hand tools I have on my bench and some of the stuff that I use to work with over the years. So I want to start with this little grinder, right? It may not seem like a big deal to the average person, this little grinder, but it's a big deal to me. I have a good neighbor of mine that gave me this grinder when I was a kid many, many years ago. We called him Mr. T, short for Mr. Tennyson. And Mr. T would let me borrow tools all the time from him. And unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But before I moved, I took that with me and have used that for many, many years. So basic tool stuff, right? I have a bunch of things hanging in the back, some sheet metal snips. Nice little, you probably seen me use this, the seal puller, which is handy to have. Helicoil kits. I've got some old Sears metric offset box end wrenches. And if you look closely at most of my tools, they're not the most expensive, they're not Snap-on. But if you look at this, you can see it's been modified, right? I had to get into a tight spot, so I just ground away at it. That's one of the benefits of having a cheaper tool. If you break it, it's not that big of a deal. Some Harbor Freight wrenches there, some metric and standard that are set up. I have a nice little 1/4-inch socket set for all the little things I do on the workbench here with my Milwaukee ratchet, and then a couple larger sockets as well with some larger ratchets there. Now these are Sears. This is one from Lowe's because they took over the Craftsman line, and I had a broken ratchet, so I bought a ratchet set when I was in high school or just out of high school. And that is the replacement from that one when it broke, so lifetime guaranteed. This is actually one of the first Sears tap and die set that I got many, many years ago. There's some other taps in here now that have broken that I've replaced. So nice little drill bit set, right? It's always good. I actually have a second one of those. There was a sale they were running when I got those, and they seemed to work well, cut pretty well. So hand tools, again, as you can see, I'm not crazy about crazy brands. I've got stuff that I've had, you know, probably came from my dad or his dad that still work. I like the end of this because I can keep it sharp for loosening those. You've probably seen me in some of my videos loosening some of those lower unit drain and vent screws because it grabs really nice in there. Have some more Harbor Freight needle nose, kind of like the little plier section I like to keep over here. All these different screwdrivers, just all different styles. All these different screwdrivers, just all these different styles. I put the smaller ones over there in the magnets so that they all stay together. Always good to have a good lump hammer because you need some force sometimes. And then of course, you know, I love to have a good vise that's bolted down tight to my bench. My workbench is actually a door. If you look closely, there's hinge marks here. So there's a door here, and then there's a door over there, which I had to kind of cut that one out to make my truck fit in here. So then I have a little rolling cabinet down here. Nice little set of tools in there. So, little rolling cabinet here, Master Mechanic Professional. I have no idea what brand that is. A neighbor of mine was throwing it out. As you see, I had to cut out my bench here for it to fit underneath, but I can roll it out to clean things out. The handles, you know, are not the greatest. They pop off sometimes when I'm pulling on them. Always keep my little tester in here. Allen key sets, my files are in here. There's some more sockets in here, some valve lapping tools. Little snap ring plier set. You saw me use that for the repairs on the power tilt and trim. I'll have some specialty sockets in here, some of the torque sockets. Look, this one is broken off. Right? Then I have some other specialty sockets that come in handy sometimes. This is for square heads. This is actually a snap-on. I got this many, many years ago when I worked at the lawnmower shop when I was a kid. Some other tools here, a little valve spring compressor. This is for a small engine. Handy to have for certain things. Right? Spark tester. Right? Just hook up your spark plug to it. Jumps the gap. You know you've got a good spark. Extra spark plug or two in here. There's actually another little 1/4 inch socket set with a couple little sockets in here. Let's take a closer look. So over the years you can see there's some odd things that you end up saving. This is a spark plug tester that's brand new. I wanted to give to my nephew to teach him how to do a spark test on an engine one day. There's a little nubby screwdriver that I've probably used to hammer on things. There's another little Craftsman set here. It's kind of like an easy out when bolts break. Doesn't always work that well, to be honest. All right, there's some wire brushes in here for my welding. There's some coal chisels that are not supposed to be in this one. They're supposed to be in the next shelf down. So then I have some older compression testers here. Some of the engines are a little difficult to get at the spark plug hole, so sometimes you can just push and hold this over the spark plug hole while someone cranks the engine. But look at that, it's an old Sears, still functions perfectly. There's another one I have here that's a, let's see, Runa Tools. I have no idea, never heard of it before, just another spare compression tester. Some pieces of threaded rod got stuck in here, some old wrenches. So these wrenches are very specific. Although they don't look it, these fit into lower units. Sometimes you need a thinner wrench to get into a lower unit. If you notice, I've ground some of this one to fit into the lower units to hold some of those nuts to take them apart, so I save them. I also make a lot of my own tools. This was to remove a bearing carrier that was needed. So then I keep a little nicer. Even though it's still Harbor Freight, this compression tester works great. I've had 3 of them from Harbor Freight before I got this one to get one that was accurate. Since I do heating and air conditioning as well, I had a very good gauge that I was able to compare it to. Just put it on here to check it out. It's a little higher pressure on this gauge, but I was able to compare it to make sure it was accurate. Again, works very well. Some punch sets that we have here to make holes when I'm making gaskets. There's also coal chisels that were in the other one. Little coal chisel set here and punches. This is all different punches. Some of these are homemade. Some of these are from a steering system, from an outboard motor. Some of them are motor shafts that I've done because they're hardened steel, so they're very good when you have to pound something down really far. Then we move on, as again my handles come off from time to time, but never really bothered me. Now I have some fuel pressure tester kits, right? So I got some gauges so I can check fuel pressure. I've got some modified ones that I use for different applications, sometimes for cleaning out injectors. This is a vacuum tester, so I can pull a vacuum down with a hand pump. And then when I'm measuring my pistons, I have a nice, so this I spent a little extra on. I did get it used, but this is a Mitutoyo micron gauge. Micron gauge? No, it's a micrometer. Sorry. Yeah, micron gauge is the air conditioning side. So this is most of the piston sizes. I'll put this in the vise here and I'll measure my piston size. And then I'll take my dial bore gauge, which again, this is not a super expensive one. It's a Granger model from Westward. And as you can see, it's been used and abused several times over the years. And it has all the different sizes in here so that I can check the dial bore gauges of my pistons to make sure that my bore and hone is correct. If I need to go a little deeper, I have some other gauges that I can measure depths with. Simple spark plug, simple piston ring compressor, right? Old Sears, had it for many, many years. Then I have some cheaper micrometers that if I need to test some sizes. Now as we dig a little deeper here, we're going to find some of the tools we're going to get into when we start doing the next project, which is boring and honing. So if any of you haven't seen this before, this is a Sunnin hand hone. So this is used to bore and hone cylinders. So you can put this on a drill. This is the same head that's on the $20,000 Sunnin honing machine. And I have some modified stones for this. They're not all here. Some of them are up on the workbench in other spots. So we're going to show you how to use these tools in one of our rebuild projects we're going to do coming up. So that's kept in there. So we also have a tester for depth of a thickness of a piece of sheet metal. Or sometimes I've used this if I bought a cheaper feeler gauge. I can put the feeler gauge inside here and get the exact size of it. So those are handy to have for when we're doing machining. We do have some other dial bore gauges in here when I'm checking valve lap or if I'm checking the clearance for the shafts for the lower units. And I do have not used very much. This is for smaller outboards to bore and hone smaller outboard engines. As you can see, it's a much smaller hone. I've got white lithium sprayed all over it so it doesn't get rusty, as it just goes bad if it gets rusty. But I don't really usually rebuild the smaller motors that much. The value is not always there. And then of course, simple feeler gauge that we need. I use this mostly for checking the gaps on rings, right? So I have all those sizes to check ring gaps. And I have an older one here that I've used for many years, right? It has a little bit of corrosion on it, but it still works. And then sometimes it's handy to have a electronic caliper so you can check shaft sizes, inside and outside dimensions. Handy to have. Of course, the batteries go dead. I have one that's not battery operated as well. And then down here I have a few more tools. This is my vacuum gauge. This is a larger style with the handheld squeeze. I have a puller kit, so if you've seen me rig an outboard, this is a simple, let's get a better picture here. So this is a simple puller set from Harbor Freight. I've had it for many, many years. It's for steering wheel pullers and other items for wheel pullers. I just bought this little eye bolt for it, and I put different bolts in there down to the flywheel of an engine so I can rig up a motor. Old school torque wrench, works like a champ. And another set of drill bits stuck in here. It's just where I've kept them. And if we go deeper here, I've got a nice little tap and die set. This is metric, so I usually pull this out when I'm working on the Yamahas or the Suzukis. So it's good to have it. It's a nice Craftsman set. It's always good to have them around because a lot of times on older motors where you'll break a bolt and you'll need to retap one. Sometimes you can weld on it and then retap the weld if you drill it out. So it gives you a lot of options. So again, most of these tools I've saved up over the years. So as I said, I'm not too picky with most tools as long as it does the job. I'm good with it. So rags, Costco, You can get a bag of rags for, I don't know, $12, something like that. Always good to have a battery tender, so when we're sitting here not working on our engine, I have one for my old Ford pickup truck that's on all the time too. Keep the batteries 100% charged all the time. So this is simple Harbor Freight rolling box, nothing fancy. It works well. Although the next one I get, I would like to get one with a worktop and maybe a little wider with more shelves. I don't like the open underneath. It just ends up getting junk thrown in there. But I've managed to get most of my tools in here. I keep my heat gun in here. So let's move in a little closer so you can see. You know, buy something, they give you stickers, just put the stickers on your toolbox, I guess. So I've got my impact gun here, electric impact gun. I've got some old impact sockets here that are standard, 1/2-inch drive. All right, good to have handy. You don't want to use a regular socket with an impact because it could shatter on you. And against, I have a bunch of fittings, right? So I needed some larger ones. So when I get into the larger ones, I have the reducers so I can pop it on there and go right to my 1/2-inch gun for some of those larger flywheel nuts. And some of the larger sockets are over here. And here is where I keep my better caliper because measuring stuff is good to have that, right? That's a Westward, also another Granger purchase. And keep another little reversible angle drill. Sometimes you need to get into a tight spot and I can crank up my air compressor. Doesn't fit with the fitting in the box, so I just cut a hole in it. All right, keep my heat gun in here. It's just a cheap Wagner heat gun. This wasn't a Home Depot. I have a Home Depot one too because it's orange. Sometimes you got some really stubborn bolts, so I have the heavy duty air gun when I need it. My air compressor is not that big, so it doesn't this can probably use more CFM than what I have, but it's usually good enough for what I'm looking for. Meter goes in here, my electric meter. You've seen me use that. Another drill bit set. And I like to keep some taps in here because these are pipe taps. So a lot of times there's fittings that need to be tapped. So I've got a bunch of pipe taps in here. And I always keep around some spare sockets, right? This is just a box. If I had a set of sockets I got at a garage sale or somebody gave to me. I had a neighbor that moved, didn't want any of the tools that he had. So I just keep them because I'm going to lose them eventually or drop them somewhere where I can't find them. And then I've got spares there. So moving down into the next shelf. Right, these drawers do lock, which I would really rather just disconnect the locks because I don't need it to lock. So I try to keep my 1/4 inch up here. Notice again I've got a bunch of spare sockets that were kicking around. Just keep them in the bag so they don't get all over the place. So this is most of my 1/4 inch stuff. Little unique little ratchets like this that you can use. Got this at Harbor Freight as well. This is an old Craftsman set that I picked up. Actually, it was after a garage sale. They were throwing everything out, and I saw a tool set there, and I said, "You're throwing this out?" I said, "Can I pay you for it?" They said, "No, whatever you want, take it." So those things are out there. This is another one that has a little hex on it, so I can put a little screwdriver. Sometimes you need to get into that spot. It's a Phillips head screw. You can get in there with it. Handy to have. Next level is all my 3/8 and some of the 1/2-inch stuff. Again, this is an old one. You can see how beat up I've abused the heck out of it. Still works fine, Craftsman. I have some of the Harbor Freight that are wobble on the end, which are handy in certain times, but sometimes it makes the socket fall off. All my spark plug sockets are in here. I have some of the metric ones that are colored. Kit was on sale. This one has some more of my kind of odd tools. You know, you always have that one drawer where not everything fits in. This is another set of Harbor Freight needle nose. And if you look closely at the end, I ground it. So this actually acts as like a snap ring plier now. Reason I did that is on the Evinrude Johnson lower units, they have a big snap ring, and you can get inside there and get that snap ring off. This is a couple of unique tools here. This is just a simple Pittsburgh clamp vice grips, which is handy to have. So I took another one, and I needed to make a valve spring compressor. So I took some unistrut and I cut it up, bolted it to it, cut the end off of this, and this is a nice little valve spring tool. The rope is for a different cause. A super long screwdriver fits in here nicely. This one's from a Navion boiler. Old school vice grips. I don't think there's any better for grabbing than the old school vice grips, but they do, vice grip makes some better ones too. See this, you can get in here. It has a set of jaws in the top, but it also can clamp right on a nut and hit it squarely. So there's some old lineman's pliers in here, a couple of changeable head screwdrivers, 4-in-1s, some pliers, some cheaper pliers that I won't use all the time, knife, and here I keep some of my plastic stuff. Sometimes you need to get into an area and work a gasket or work a seal around and you don't want to mar anything up. A couple of bit tips. It's always good to have some Torx and some Allen key bit tips. Extra kicking around. Little short handled one to get into a tight spot. So all those sorts of things in there. And we drop down to the next larger drawer, and I have all my wrenches in here. So I have metric, kind of some offsets here. These are handy for getting into tight spots, and then just regular wrench sets. You can see in the back here I have some of my larger 1/2-inch sockets and extensions because they just didn't fit in this one, which is another reason I'd like to get another one eventually. We'll get there. And then ratchet wrenches, got some metric ratchet wrenches here, handy. Then I have a bunch of oddball wrenches that just I've picked up over the years, and again, sometimes I modify them, sometimes I can beat on them because I'm not worried about breaking them. Then underneath is kind of all my larger tools, mallets. There's a bigger torque wrench in here that I keep meaning to give back to a friend. You know what, I'm going to put that in my other box with my other torque wrench. Hacksaw in here, don't use that much anymore because of that handheld Sawzall. Always good to have a nice big breaker bar, right? I actually just picked this one up not too long ago. And then I just have some pipes in here so that I can use as cheaters to put on wrenches so I can get more leverage. Always good to have.